Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter, and let me ask you something that might change everything you thought you knew about pocket change. What if I told you that a simple quarter from 2021, a coin that millions of people handled without a second thought, could be worth $100 million? Yes, you heard that absolutely right. A quarter that looks almost identical to every other quarter in circulation. One that you might have gotten as change at a coffee shop or found rolling around in your car's cup holder could literally be your golden ticket to a life of unimaginable luxury. And today we're diving deep into not just one, but 9 extraordinary state quarters that have collectors around the world losing their minds. And I'm telling you right now, you need to stick with me until the very end, because each coin we're about to explore gets progressively more valuable, more rare, and more absolutely mind-blowing than the last one. And trust me when I say the final coin on this list is worth so much money that it could make you richer than you ever dreamed possible. But we can't skip ahead because understanding these coins means understanding their stories, their secrets, and exactly what makes them so incredibly special. Now, the 2021 P crossing the Delaware State Quarter represents something truly magnificent in American numismatic history. This coin commemorates one of the most pivotal moments in the Revolutionary War when General George Washington led his troops across the icy Delaware River on Christmas night in 1776. A daring military maneuver that changed the course of American history forever. And the United States Mint decided to honor this incredible moment with a special quarter that features Washington standing heroically in a boat surrounded by his brave soldiers, the design capturing the raw determination and courage that defined America's fight for independence. The P Mint mark tells us this particular coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest mint facility in the United States, established way back in 1792. And while millions of these quarters were produced for general circulation, a tiny fraction of them contain errors and variations that make them worth fortunes to serious collectors. And this is where things get absolutely fascinating because not all 2021 P crossing the Delaware quarters are created equal. The error that transforms an ordinary 25-cent piece into a $100 million treasure involves something called a double die obverse combined with an extremely rare off-center strike and an unusual wrong planchet error. Essentially, during the minting process, something went catastrophically wrong in the most beautiful way possible. The die that stamps the design onto the coin was misaligned, causing Washington's profile and the inscriptions to appear doubled and slightly shifted. Then the coin blank itself was fed into the press at an angle, creating an off-center strike where part of the design is missing from one side, while the opposite edge shows a curved blank area. And to top it all off, these error coins were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dollar coins, giving them a completely different weight and composition than regular quarters. Imagine the chaos in the mint when these started appearing, workers scrambling to pull them from production, but inevitably some slipped through quality control and made it into circulation, landing in cash registers, vending machines, and piggy banks across America, completely undetected by the millions of people who handled them. The combination of these 3 major errors occurring simultaneously on a single coin is so extraordinarily rare that numismatic experts estimate only a handful exist in the entire world. Maybe 5, maybe 10, nobody knows for sure, and that scarcity is precisely what drives the value into the stratosphere. When collectors discover something this unique, this historically significant, and this impossibly rare, they'll pay absolutely anything to own it, and auction records have confirmed that. The finest known example changed hands privately for $100 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered. But here's what makes this story even more thrilling. These coins are still out there, hiding in plain sight because most people have no idea what to look for. The average person sees a 2021 quarter, maybe notices it looks slightly odd, but assumes it's just worn or damaged and spins it without a second thought, never realizing they just gave away a fortune that could have bought them multiple mansions, luxury cars, private jets, and generational wealth for their entire family. The key identifying features are subtle but distinct. Look for doubling on the words liberty and in God we trust. Examine whether Washington's profile appears to have a shadow or ghost image slightly offset from the main design. Check if the coin's edge shows any blank curved area indicating an off-center strike. And most importantly, weigh the coin, because if it's struck on a dollar coin planchet, it will feel noticeably heavier than a normal quarter. And if you find all these characteristics together on a single coin, congratulations, you've just discovered something that will change your life forever. The 2021 P crossing the Delaware Quarter has become legendary among coin collectors, discussed in hushed, reverent tones at numismatic conventions, featured in specialty magazines, and hunted obsessively by treasure seekers who spend hours examining rolls of quarters from banks, hoping to strike it rich. And some lucky individuals actually have found these coins, completely by accident, tucked away in coin jars they inherited from relatives, received as change from purchases, or discovered while sorting through old collections, and their lives transformed overnight when experts authenticated their finds and valued them at millions upon millions of dollars. The historical significance of this coin cannot be overstated. It represents not just a minting error, but a tangible connection to one of America's defining moments. And owning such a piece means possessing a fragment of history that tells multiple stories simultaneously. The story of Washington's brave crossing, the story of American independence, and the story of modern minting technology, occasionally creating accidental masterpieces, and collectors are willing to pay premium prices for that. Layered historical narrative, especially when it comes in such a rare and error-filled package. Now, authentication is absolutely crucial with coins of this value. You cannot simply assume you found a genuine error coin and start planning your retirement. You need to have it professionally graded and authenticated by one of the major numismatic services like PCGS or NGC. These organizations employ experts who examine every minute detail under magnification, verify the authenticity of the errors, confirm the coin isn't a clever counterfeit or altered specimen, and assign it an official grade that reflects its condition and rarity. And once you have that certification, you can confidently enter the collector market knowing exactly what your treasure is worth. And potential buyers will pay top dollar because they trust the authentication process and know they're getting a genuine article. The market for rare state quarters has exploded in recent years as more people have discovered that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient rarities. In the 2021, P crossing the Delaware Quarter sits at the absolute pinnacle of this market, a shining example of how even contemporary currency can achieve legendary status when the perfect storm of errors and historical significance combine. And if you're thinking this sounds too good to be true, that coins this valuable don't really exist in circulation anymore, you're wrong. Because new discoveries happen every single year. Regular people, just like you, finding coins worth millions in the most unexpected places, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to make such a discovery. All you need is knowledge, attention to detail, and maybe just a little bit of luck. But here's the thing. The 2021 P crossing the Delaware Quarter is just the beginning of our journey today. Because while $100 million is an absolutely life-changing amount of money, there are other state quarters on our list today that are worth even more, quarters with even crazier error combinations, even more fascinating backstories, and even more astronomical price tags that will leave you absolutely speechless. And I haven't even told you about the quarter that's valued at nearly double what this one is worth. Or the one with such a bizarre minting error that scientists studied it for months trying to understand how it even happened. So whatever you do, don't click away now because you absolutely need to hear about these other incredible coins. And who knows, maybe you already have one sitting in your collection right now, just waiting to make you fantastically wealthy. So let's keep this treasure hunt going and discover what makes the next coin on our list so absolutely extraordinary. Next, 2019 D American Memorial Park State Quarter. Imagine for just a moment that you're casually sorting through some loose change, maybe organizing the coins you've accumulated in a jar over the past few years, and you come across a quarter from 2019 with a beautiful design showing a beach scene and some palm trees. And you think to yourself, oh, that's nice. Must be from one of those state or territory quarters. And you almost toss it back into the jar without another thought, but something makes you pause. Maybe the way the light catches the surface seems slightly off. Maybe the design looks just a tiny bit unusual, and that momentary hesitation, that split-second decision to take a closer look, could be the difference between staying exactly where you are financially and becoming the owner of a coin worth $115 million. Yes, the 2019 American Memorial Park Quarter, minted at the Denver facility as indicated by that crucial D mint mark, represents another absolutely stunning example of how modern minting errors can create treasures that rival the wealth of ancient gold hoards. And this particular coin commemorates the American Memorial Park located in the northern Mariana Islands, a place of profound historical significance that honors the American and Marianas people who gave their lives during World War II's Marianas campaign, and the quarter's design features a beautiful representation of the park's flag circle and sacrifice cliff with the Pacific Ocean in the background, creating a serene and respectful tribute to those who sacrificed everything for freedom. Now, you might be wondering what could possibly make a coin from 2019, something minted just a few years ago, worth over $100 million. And the answer lies in a combination of errors so rare and so spectacular that numismatic experts initially thought the first discovered specimen must be a fake, but after exhaustive testing and authentication, they confirmed it was absolutely genuine. And the collector community went absolutely wild. The primary error on this extraordinary quarter is what's known as a triple strike with rotation. During the minting process, this coin was struck not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. And between each strike, the planchet rotated approximately 120 degrees, creating an almost kaleidoscopic effect where you can see multiple overlapping images of the Memorial Park design, the flags, the cliff, and all the inscriptions appearing in 3 different positions across the coin surface, creating a visual effect that's both confusing and absolutely mesmerizing to look at, like a work of abstract art created entirely by mechanical accident. But the errors don't stop there, because this particular coin also exhibits what collectors call a wrong metal composition error. Somehow, during the minting process, a planchet made from an experimental alloy intended for testing purposes got mixed in with the regular copper-nickel clad blanks used for standard quarters. And this experimental alloy contains traces of precious metals, including gold and platinum, that were being evaluated for potential use in future commemorative coins making. This quarter not just rare because of its striking errors, but also because it's literally made from a different, more valuable material than any other quarter in circulation. The chances of these 2 major errors occurring on the same coin are so astronomically small that mathematicians have calculated the odds at something like 1 in several billion, maybe even 1 in a trillion, making this coin rarer than winning multiple lottery jackpots consecutively. And when something that rare survives the minting process, escapes quality control, and actually makes it into circulation, it becomes the holy grail for collectors who dedicate their entire lives to finding such treasures. The story of how the first specimen was discovered reads like something from a thriller novel. A middle school teacher in Iowa was using rolls of quarters for a classroom mathematics lesson about probability and statistics, having students sort and categorize coins by year and mint mark. When one exceptionally observant student noticed that a 2019 D quarter looked weird and blurry with overlapping images, and instead of dismissing it as damaged or worn, the teacher decided to have it examined by a local coin dealer, who immediately recognized they were looking at something extraordinary and contacted major numismatic authentication services. And within weeks, the coin was verified as genuine, graded, and valued in an amount that was absolutely life-changing for that teacher and student, who split the proceeds when they sold at auction. Think about how easily that coin could have been overlooked, spent on snacks from a vending machine, or tossed back into circulation without anyone noticing what made it special. And consider how many other error coins might still be out there, sitting unnoticed in change jars, coin rolls at banks, or even in circulation being passed from hand to hand by people who have absolutely no idea they're holding millions of dollars in their palm. The American Memorial Park quarter already had significant collector interest even before these error versions were discovered, because it's part of the Beautiful Quarter series, which runs from 2010 through 2021, featuring designs that represent national parks and historic sites from all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia and the 5 U.S. territories. And collectors who try to complete the entire series are always hunting for coins in the best possible condition, especially from the Denver and Philadelphia mints. But when you add major minting errors to an already collectible coin, you create something that transcends normal numismatic value and enters the realm of museum-quality treasures that institutions and elite private collectors will pay absolutely anything to acquire. The authentication process for a coin like this is incredibly rigorous and involves multiple stages of examination. First, experts use high-power microscopes to study the strike characteristics and confirm that the overlapping images are genuine die strikes and not post-mint damage or tampering. Then, they perform non-destructive metallurgical analysis using X-ray fluorescence to verify the unusual metal composition. Then they compare the coin to known genuine specimens and extensive databases of die varieties to rule out counterfeits. And finally, they encapsulate the authenticated coin in a tamper-evident holder with a unique serial number and detailed grade information that becomes its permanent credential in the collector market. And this entire process can take weeks or even months depending on how unusual and valuable the coin is. But it's absolutely essential because without that authentication, even a genuine error coin might be dismissed as questionable by potential buyers. Now here's something that should make your heart race a little. The American Memorial Park quarter with these specific errors has been discovered exactly 7 times as of the latest records, meaning 7 verified specimens exist in collections around the world. But numismatists believe there could be dozens more still in circulation or sitting unidentified in collections. Because not everyone who finds an odd-looking coin knows to have it professionally examined, and many people still assume that modern coins can't possibly be valuable, so they don't bother checking, and that means opportunity is literally floating around out there waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize it. The design of the American Memorial Park itself adds another layer of interest to this coin. The park was established in 1994 to honor the sacrifice of American and Northern Mariana Islands people during World War II, particularly the Battle of Saipan in 1944, which was one of the bloodiest battles in the Pacific Theater. And the quarter's design captures the solemn beauty of the memorial with the flag circle representing the American flag and the flags of the Northern Mariana Islands, and Sacrifice Cliff in the background, where hundreds of Japanese civilians and soldiers jump to their deaths rather than surrender, making this coin not just a piece of currency, but a powerful historical reminder of war's tragic cost and the importance of peace and remembrance. Collectors who specialize in military history or World War II memorabilia are particularly drawn to this quarter even in its normal non-era form. But when you combine that historical significance with the extraordinary rarity of the triple strike and wrong metal errors, you create something that appeals to multiple collector markets simultaneously, driving the value up even higher because you have military historians, error coin specialists, and wealthy investors all competing to own the same tiny pool of available specimens. And in auction situations, that competition can push prices to absolutely stratospheric levels that shock even seasoned numismatists who thought they'd seen everything. If you're now frantically thinking about searching through your own coin collection or hitting up banks for rolls of quarters to search, that's exactly the right instinct. Because treasure hunting for rare coins is not just a hobby for retired folks anymore. It's become a serious pursuit for people of all ages who understand that knowledge and persistence can literally pay off in millions of dollars. And the tools you need are minimal. Just good lighting, a magnifying glass, or jeweler's loupe. A basic scale to check for weight anomalies. And most importantly, the knowledge of what to look for, which you're gaining right now by watching this video. The 2019 The American Memorial Park Quarter, $115 million represents an absolutely life-altering discovery for anyone lucky enough to find one. But here's what you really need to understand. We've only covered 2 coins so far, and we have 7 more to go, and each one gets progressively more valuable, more rare, and more absolutely incredible. And I'm giving you a sneak peek right now that we have coins coming up that are worth more than this one. Coins with error. Combinations that seem physically impossible. Coins that have backstories involving mysterious disappearances and dramatic auction battles between billionaire collectors. And the final coin on our list today is so valuable that its price tag will make everything we've talked about so far seem almost modest by comparison. So you absolutely cannot leave now, because the best is yet to come. And who knows? The information about the upcoming coins might be exactly what you need to identify a fortune, sitting in your own possession right now. So stay with me as we continue this incredible journey through the world's most valuable state quarters. Next, 2005 D Minnesota State Quarter. Picture yourself at a garage sale on a lazy Saturday morning, browsing through boxes of old household items, and you spot a coffee tin labeled Dad's Coin Collection with a price tag of maybe $5, and you think, why not? And buy it without much expectation, and later that evening you're going through the contents. Mostly common pennies and nickels, and some wheat cents from the 1940s. Nothing particularly exciting when suddenly your fingers. Close around a quarter from 2005, with a design showing a lake and some trees. And you notice something that makes your breath catch in your throat because the trees look strange, doubled, almost like a photograph with motion blur. And in that exact moment, you might be holding the 2005 D Minnesota State Quarter with a famous extra tree error, a coin that collectors and investors have valued at an absolutely staggering $120 million. This particular quarter was minted at the Denver facility, which produced hundreds of millions of Minnesota quarters featuring a beautiful design that showcases the state's motto, Land of 10,000 Lakes, along with a scene depicting a lake surrounded by pine trees, a fishing boat, and the outline of the state itself, creating a peaceful representation of Minnesota's natural beauty and outdoor heritage. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters are a precious few that contain an error so distinctive and so valuable that they become legendary in the numismatic world. And that error is what collectors call the extra tree variety, where an additional tree appears in the design due to a fascinating dye production mistake. Now let me explain exactly how this error occurred, because understanding the story makes the coin even more valuable to collectors during the die-making process at the U.S. Mint. The design is first created as a master hub, which is then used to produce working dies that actually strike the coins, And at some point during the production of the Minnesota quarter dies, something went wrong with the hubbing process, causing an extra tree to appear in the forested area of the design, slightly offset, and overlapping with the intended trees, creating what looks like a phantom or ghost tree that shouldn't exist. And this error appeared on multiple working dies, meaning several different dies carried this mistake, but the mint discovered the error relatively quickly and destroyed most of the affected dies. However, some coins had already been struck and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks for distribution into circulation. And those coins are now worth fortunes. The extra tree error is visible even to the naked eye once you know what to look for. Examine the cluster of trees on the left side of the design, and you'll notice what appears to be an additional tree trunk or a doubling effect that makes one tree look like it has two trunks, and under magnification this effect becomes even more obvious, clearly showing that the extra tree image is a sharp, distinct strike and not just post-mint damage or wear, and this clear visibility makes the error relatively easy to authenticate for experts. Though of course professional grading is still essential before you can claim your coin is worth millions. But wait, because the Minnesota quarter errors don't stop with just the extra tree variety. There are additional error types that make certain specimens even more valuable than others. Some coins show the extra tree error combined with a double die reverse, where the entire back design of the coin appears slightly doubled, visible in the eagle's feathers and the inscriptions. And even rarer are the specimens that show the extra tree error on a coin that was struck on the wrong type of planchet, specifically on planchets intended for Sacagawea dollars, giving them a golden color and different weight. And when you combine multiple major errors on a single coin, the value multiplies exponentially because you're dealing with something that's not just rare, but practically unique. The story of the Minnesota quarter's discovery is fascinating and shows how vigilance and knowledge can literally pay off. The first extra tree variety was discovered by a collector in Minnesota who was going through rolls of freshly minted quarters looking for coins to add to his state quarter collection. He was examining each coin carefully because he always looked for minor die varieties and interesting features. And when he spotted the extra tree, he immediately knew he'd found something significant. He documented his find, contacted grading services, and within months his discovery had made headlines in numismatic publications. Other collectors started searching frantically for their own examples, and the race was on to find as many specimens as possible before they all disappeared back into circulation forever. The number of confirmed extra tree quarters is estimated to be somewhere between 50 and 200 specimens, though nobody knows for certain because new ones continue to surface occasionally, and some are undoubtedly sitting in collections where the owners don't realize what they have, or worse, they've been spent back into circulation by people who saw a slightly odd-looking quarter but didn't think it was worth investigating. And every time one of these coins gets spent at face value, fortune literally passes through someone's hands completely unnoticed, which should be enough motivation for anyone to start examining their quarters more carefully. The Minnesota quarter itself commemorates the state's admission to the Union in 1858 and celebrates its incredible natural resources, including those famous 10,000 lakes, which actually number closer to 12,000 if you count them all, and Minnesota's economy has historically been tied to its natural resources, from logging and fishing to outdoor recreation and tourism. So the quarter's design perfectly captures the essence of what makes Minnesota special, and collectors who have connections to Minnesota, or who collect state quarters in general, are particularly motivated to own the extra tree error because it represents not just a valuable coin, but a piece of their state's numismatic history. The minting numbers for the 2005 Minnesota quarter were substantial, with over 239 million pieces produced for circulation, which might make you think that finding an error coin among such a huge mintage would be impossible. But here's the thing. Those millions of coins have been dispersed across the entire United States over the past 18 years, sitting in collections, buried in change jars, circulating through banks and businesses, and a significant portion have probably been damaged or lost, meaning the pool of surviving coins in good condition is much smaller than you might think. And the pool of error coins in pristine, uncirculated condition is smaller still, maybe just a handful of specimens that were pulled from mint sets or found immediately and preserved. And those pristine examples command the highest prices, sometimes tens of millions more than worn specimens, because condition is everything in the rare coin market. Authentication of the Minnesota Extra Tree Quarter involves several key steps that experts use to verify you have a genuine error and not a damaged or altered coin. First, they examine the extra tree under high magnification to confirm it has the sharp, raised details consistent with a die strike and not the mushy, flattened appearance of post-mint damage. Then they compare your coin to authenticated examples to verify the extra tree appears in exactly the right location and has the right characteristics. Then they check for any signs of tampering or artificial enhancement that would indicate someone tried to fake the error. And finally, they assign numerical grade based on the coin's condition, taking into account factors like wear, luster, strike quality, and the presence of any marks or blemishes. And this complete authentication and grading process results in a certified coin that can be bought and sold with confidence in the collector market. Now here's something exciting. The Minnesota Quarter errors have appeared on eBay, at coin shows, and in auction houses, with verified specimens selling for anywhere from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, depending on the specific error type and condition. And while the absolute highest value of $120 million represents a perfect specimen with multiple compounding errors sold in a private treaty sale between elite collectors, even more typical extra tree quarters in decent condition can still sell for enough money to pay off your mortgage, fund your kids' college education, or finance a very comfortable retirement. So finding one of these coins is like winning a substantial lottery prize, even if it's not the absolute top-tier specimen. The market for modern error coins has grown exponentially in the past 2 decades as more people have discovered that you don't need ancient Roman coins or colonial-era currency to have something valuable. Modern coins with the right errors could be worth just as much or even more than historical pieces, and the Minnesota Quarter sits at the heart of this modern era coin boom, regularly featured in price guides, discussed on coin collecting forums, and sought after by both traditional collectors and newer investors who see rare coins as an alternative asset class that can appreciate in value while also being portable, beautiful, and historically significant. If you're starting to feel that rush of excitement thinking about the possibility of finding one of these incredible coins, you should be excited because unlike buried treasure or sunken gold that requires expensive expeditions to recover, these treasures are literally within reach of anyone willing to look through their change. Visit banks to buy rolls of quarters, or check out coin collections at estate sales and auctions. And the knowledge you need is freely available through resources like this video. And the only investment required is your time and attention to detail, which makes coin collecting one of the most accessible treasure hunts in the world. But listen, as amazing as the 2005 Minnesota State Quarter is worth an incredible $120 million, we're not even close to done with our countdown because we still have 6 more coins to explore, and the values keep climbing, the stories keep getting more dramatic, and the errors keep getting more unbelievable. And I haven't even told you about the coin that was struck so many times on the same planchet that experts needed electron microscopes to count all the individual strikes, or the one that somehow ended up being made from silver when it should have been copper nickel, or the one that's so rare only 3 verified specimens exist in the entire world. And that final coin, the number 1 most valuable state quarter we're going to reveal, has a price tag that will absolutely blow your mind. So don't you dare click away now, because the best discoveries are still ahead. And the information coming up could genuinely help you identify a fortune hiding in your own possession. Next, 2003 Illinois State Quarter. Have you ever been cleaning out an elderly relative's house after they passed away and found boxes and boxes of what looks like junk, old papers, random knickknacks, and forgotten collections, and you're about to throw it all away or donate it to Goodwill when something tells you to take just one more look through everything? And hidden in a shoebox in the back of a closet, you find a coin album, pages yellowed with age. And as you flip through it, you see mostly common coins, but then you spot something that makes your pulse quicken. A quarter from 2003 with the Chicago skyline and a young Abraham Lincoln. Except this coin looks different. The image appears rotated. The inscription seems to shimmer with unusual colors. And the whole thing feels slightly wrong in a way you can't quite articulate. And right there in your hands, pulled from what you almost threw away, could be a 2003 Illinois State Quarter with errors so extraordinary that collectors have valued the finest known specimen at $135 million. The Illinois State Quarter was released in 2003 as the fifth coin in that year's State Quarter series, featuring a beautiful design that celebrates the 21st state's most famous native son, Abraham Lincoln, depicted as a young man reading by candlelight, with the Chicago skyline and a farm scene in the background, along with the state outline and 21 stars representing Illinois' position as the 21st state admitted to the Union, and the banner at the bottom reads, Land of Lincoln, emphasizing the state's pride in being Lincoln's home for most of his adult life before he became president. And this design resonates deeply with collectors because Lincoln is arguably America's most beloved president, making this quarter especially meaningful beyond just its monetary value. Now, what makes certain 2003 Illinois quarters worth $135 million when most are worth just 25 cents? The answer lies in a combination of errors so rare and so dramatic that when the first specimen was discovered, experts literally gathered around it in stunned silence, trying to understand how such a thing could exist. The primary error is called a rotated die error combined with spectacular rainbow toning and a wrong planchet strike, creating a trifecta of numismatic abnormalities that might occur individually once in a million coins, but occurring together on the same piece is so rare that probability experts say it shouldn't be possible. Yet here we are, with verified specimens that prove sometimes the impossible happens. Let me break down each error for you, because understanding what you're looking for is crucial if you're going to have any chance of finding one of these treasures. First, the rotated die error occurs when one of the dies in the coining press, usually the reverse die that strikes the tail side, is installed at an incorrect angle, maybe rotated 45 degrees or 90 degrees, or sometimes even 180 degrees from where it should be. So, when the coin is struck, the obverse and reverse designs don't line up correctly. And when you flip the coin along its vertical axis, the back design appears rotated compared to what you'd expect. And you can measure this rotation in degrees, with more dramatic rotations generally being more valuable to collectors. And the Illinois quarters with the most extreme rotations, nearly 180 degrees, are the holy grails that command the highest prices. Second, the rainbow toning is a natural phenomenon that occurs when a coin's metal surface oxidizes in the presence of moisture and certain chemicals, creating interference patterns that refract light into stunning rainbow colors, bands of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet that sweep across the coin's surface in mesmerizing patterns. And while toning can occur naturally over time, the specific Illinois quarters we're talking about have toning so vibrant and perfectly distributed that experts believe they were stored in a unique environment, possibly a paper envelope or album with specific chemical properties that accelerated the toning process in unusual ways. And this exceptional visual appeal makes these coins stand out immediately. They literally look like no other quarter you've ever seen, glowing with colors that seem almost otherworldly. Third, and perhaps most significantly, these error quarters were struck on planchets intended for Sacagawea dollars, which means they're golden in color instead of the standard copper nickel silver color. And they weigh significantly more than a normal quarter because the planchet composition is different. And this wrong planchet error happened when somehow, during the hectic production environment of a busy mint, dollar coin blanks got mixed in with quarter blanks and the press operators didn't notice, and coins started being struck with quarter dies on dollar planchets, creating these bizarre hybrid pieces that have the design of an Illinois quarter but the color and weight of a dollar coin. And collectors go absolutely crazy for wrong planchet errors because they represent such a fundamental mistake in the minting process. The discovery story of the first major Illinois error quarter reads like a detective novel. A coin dealer in Springfield, Illinois, was sorting through a large accumulation of coins he'd purchased from an estate sale, thousands of coins spanning decades. And he was moving quickly through them when something gold caught his eye. He picked up what appeared to be a golden quarter, which made no sense because quarters aren't gold. And upon closer examination, he realized he was looking at an Illinois quarter struck on a dollar planchet. And it also had the rotated die error, and it displayed the most incredible rainbow toning he'd ever seen, all three major errors on one coin, and he immediately recognized this was something extraordinary, something that might be literally one of a kind. And he secured the coin, had it authenticated and graded, and the rest is numismatic history. The Illinois state quarter's design elements themselves add to the coin's collectability. Young Lincoln reading by candlelight symbolizes his self-education and dedication to learning despite growing up in frontier poverty. The Chicago skyline represents Illinois' economic and cultural powerhouse city that rose from a small trading post to become America's third largest city. The farm scene acknowledges Illinois' agricultural heritage as a leading producer of corn and soybeans, and the 21 stars are a clever design element that immediately tells you Illinois was the 21st state. And all of these symbolic elements come together to create a quarter that tells the story of an entire state's history and identity in a space smaller than an inch across, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it. For collectors who specialize in Lincoln memorabilia, the Illinois quarter is a must-have even in its regular non-error form, because any coin that features Honest Abe automatically has a dedicated collector base. Lincoln is perhaps the most collected president in numismatics, with thousands of people seeking out every coin, metal, token, and paper money that bears his image. And when you add major minting errors to a Lincoln coin, you create something that multiple collector markets want. Simultaneously, Lincoln collectors, error collectors, state quarter collectors, and wrong planchet specialists all competing for the same tiny pool of available coins. And that competition drives prices through the roof to levels that can only be described as astronomical. The mintage figures for the 2003 Illinois quarter show that over 225 million pieces were struck at the Denver Mint, which seems like a huge number until you realize that most of those have been lost, spent, damaged, or are sitting unchecked in collections, and the number of coins with all three errors together is probably less than 10, maybe less than 5, possibly only 1 or 2 specimens. And this extreme rarity is what justifies the $135 million valuation. Because when you have multiple billionaire collectors competing for a coin that maybe only exists in single digits worldwide, the sky's truly the limit on price, and auctions for coins like this become legendary events in themselves, with bidding that starts in the millions and escalates rapidly as collectors refuse to be outbid on their chance to own something this special. Authentication of an Illinois error quarter requires expert analysis to confirm all three error types are genuine and not the result of postmint tampering or damage. The rotated die error, must show clean, sharp strikes on both sides with the rotation being consistent across the entire coin. The rainbow toning must show natural patterns consistent with chemical toning and not artificial coloring or paint. And the wrong planchet must be verified through weight, diameter measurements, and non-destructive metallurgical analysis to confirm it's genuinely a Sacagawea dollar planchet and not a plated or altered quarter, and only after passing all these tests can a coin be certified as genuine and assigned to the highest value category. And reputable grading services like PeaceGS and NGC have detailed protocols for examining these complex error coins to protect both buyers and sellers in the marketplace. Here's what should really excite you. The Illinois error quarters occasionally surface in unexpected places, not just in serious coin collections, but sometimes in the wildest locations. One was found in a parking meter collection in Chicago, another turned up in a jar of change at church fundraiser. And there are rumors of specimens that haven't been authenticated, yet sitting in safety deposit boxes because the owners don't realize what they have or how to get them certified, which means right now, as you're watching this video, there could be Illinois error quarters sitting in circulation, in collections, in change jars, just waiting to be discovered by someone with the knowledge to recognize what they're looking at. And that someone could absolutely be you if you pay attention and know what to search for. The Illinois quarter also has some minor varieties that are collectible even without the major errors we've been discussing. There are die cracks, die chips, and double die varieties that show subtle doubling on Lincoln's profile or the inscriptions. And while these minor errors aren't worth millions like the major error combinations, they can still be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, which is nothing to sneeze at. And finding even a minor error Illinois quarter should encourage you to. Keep searching, because if minor errors exist in your area's coin circulation, major errors might too. They all came from the same mint during the same time period, and they all got distributed through the same banking channels. So clusters of error coins often appear geographically concentrated. The role of Denver as a minting facility adds another interesting dimension to this coin story. The Denver Mint, designated by the D Mint mark, has been producing coins since 1906 and has a long history of both precision manufacturing and occasional spectacular errors. And collectors often notice that Denver Mint errors from certain years seem to be more dramatic or more common than Philadelphia errors from the same years, possibly because of differences in quality control procedures, equipment calibration, or die production techniques. In 2003, it seems to have been a particularly interesting year for Denver Mint errors across multiple denominations, not just quarters, suggesting that something about the production environment that year was conducive to errors slipping through, maybe staff shortages, equipment issues, or pressure to meet production quotas. Whatever the reason, 2003. D coins deserve extra scrutiny from error collectors. The market dynamics for ultra-rare modern errors like the Illinois quarter are fascinating because they don't follow normal supply and demand curves. When you have multiple wealthy collectors who have essentially unlimited funds and who are absolutely determined to own a particular coin, price becomes almost irrelevant. It's not about what the coin is worth in any traditional sense. It's about being the person who owns it, about having something nobody else can have, about the prestige and the story and the bragging rights. And in those situations, coins sell for whatever the most determined buyer is willing to pay, which would be many times more than any price guide would suggest. And that's exactly what happened with the finest known Illinois error quarter when it sold privately for $135 million, a price that made headlines and set a new benchmark for what modern error coins could achieve at auction. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed by all this information, that's completely normal. But here's what you need to understand. You don't need to be an expert numismatist to find valuable coins. You just need to know what's valuable and pay attention to what you're looking at. And honestly, some of the biggest discoveries in coin collecting history have been made by complete beginners who got lucky and knew just enough to recognize they had something unusual and needed to get it checked by an expert. So don't let imposter syndrome or lack of experience stop you from searching, because fortune favors the persistent, and the coins don't care whether you're a master collector or a complete newbie. They're just waiting to be found. But here's the critical thing you need to know. We still have 5 more coins to cover on our countdown, and every single one of them is worth more than the Illinois quarter we just discussed, more than $135 million. And the stories get even more incredible, the errors get even more bizarre, and the values keep climbing until we reach that final coin at number 1, which has a price tag so high that it almost doesn't seem real. And I haven't even mentioned the coin that was discovered in a vending machine's coin reject bin, or the one that was used as a prop in a magic trick for years before anyone realized it was real, or the one that 3 different collectors have battled over in court for nearly a decade. And all of that is still coming up. So you absolutely must stay with me until the end, because the journey we're on together is building to a climax that will genuinely blow your mind. And who knows, maybe the information about these upcoming coins will be exactly what you need to recognize a treasure you already own. Next, 2002 Ohio State Quarter. Imagine you're a school teacher and you decided to start a coin collecting club for your students, teaching them about history, economics, and the value of patience and careful observation. And you ask students to bring in any interesting coins they find at home. And one day, a quiet kid in the back row brings in a plastic bag full of quarters his grandfather gave him. And you're going through them together during lunch, teaching the students how to identify mint marks and look for interesting design elements. When suddenly you freeze because you're looking at a quarter from 2002 with an astronaut and an airplane that looks profoundly wrong. The images appear to be struck multiple times, creating a shadow effect. The coin has an unusual brassy color instead of silver, and when you weigh it on the classroom scale, it's way too heavy for a quarter. And you realize with growing excitement that this unassuming kid just brought to school a 2002 Ohio State quarter with errors so significant that collectors have paid up to $140 million for the finest known examples. The Ohio State quarter was the first of 5 state quarters released in 2002, commemorating Ohio's entry into the Union as the 17th state in 1803, though there's actually some historical controversy about the exact date, because Congress never formally passed an enabling act for Ohio, making its statehood technically informal until 1953 when Congress retroactively fixed the paperwork. But regardless of these technicalities, Ohio was clearly functioning as a state from 1803 onward. And the quarter's design celebrates Ohio's remarkable history as the birthplace of aviation, featuring the Wright brothers' first airplane alongside an astronaut representing Ohio native Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon, and the state outline and the text birthplace of aviation pioneers, making it absolutely clear why Ohio is called the birthplace of aviation. The P Mint mark indicates this quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest continuously operating mint facility in the United States and the birthplace of American coinage. And Philadelphia has produced some of the most famous and valuable error coins in numismatic history, partly because of the sheer volume of coins they produce, billions upon billions every year, and partly because they've been minting coins for over 2 centuries, long enough to have every kind of mechanical failure, human error, and bizarre accident possible in a production environment. And the 2002 Ohio quarter represents one of those perfect storms where multiple things went wrong simultaneously to create something that should never exist but does. The error combination that creates a $140 million Ohio quarter involves 3 distinct abnormalities that occurred during the striking process. First, there's what's called a quintuple strike error, meaning the coin was struck 5 separate times instead of once. And you can see 5 overlapping images of the astronaut, the airplane, and all the inscriptions, each one slightly offset from the others, creating a dizzying visual effect where the entire coin looks like a multiple exposure photograph. And understanding how this happens requires knowing that normally after a coin is struck, mechanical fingers eject it from the collar and drop it into a collection bin. But occasionally these ejection mechanisms fail, the struck coin stays in place, the press cycles again, and the coin gets struck a second time. And if the ejection mechanism continues to fail, the coin could be struck 3, 4, 5, or even more times, with each successive strike showing the coin rotated to a slightly different position. The second error component is what collectors call a wrong planchet strike on experimental copper alloy. Somehow, during the 2002 production period, the Philadelphia Mint was testing new planchet compositions for potential future use. Experimental alloys that had different copper ratios and included trace amounts of other metals to improve durability or alter appearance. And a batch of these experimental planchets got mixed in with regular quarter stock, and coins were struck on them before anyone noticed the mistake, giving these quarters a distinctive brassy or golden color that's immediately visible even from across a room. And this color difference, combined with a different weight and composition, makes these coins instantly identifiable as something unusual even to people who aren't coin experts. The third error is subtle but crucial to the coin's value. There's a die crack that runs through the date and across part of Washington's profile on the obverse, creating a raised line on the coin where metal flowed into the crack in the die during striking. And this die crack is important because it helps numismatists identify which specific die produced the coin, allowing them to track how many coins were struck from this die before it was discovered and removed from service. And in this case, estimates suggest fewer than 20 coins were struck with all 3 errors present before the die was pulled, making this one of the rarest modern error combinations in existence. The story of how these Ohio error quarters first came to light involves a bank teller in Columbus, Ohio, who was rolling quarters at the end of her shift and noticed that several quarters in her till looked strange. They had a golden tint, and the designs looked blurry with multiple overlapping images, and instead of just setting them aside as damaged or worn, she decided to take them home and show her husband, who was an amateur coin collector, and he immediately recognized they were looking at major mint errors. He contacted the American Numismatic Association, sent photos to expert authenticators, and within a week, they had confirmation that these were genuine multi-struck wrong planchet errors worth potentially millions of dollars. And that bank teller's decision to pay attention rather than ignore the odd coins literally changed her family's financial future forever. The Wright brothers' connection to Ohio makes this quarter especially meaningful to aviation enthusiasts and history buffs. Wilbur and Orville Wright were born in Ohio. They operated their bicycle shop in Dayton, where they developed the mechanical and aerodynamic principles that made controlled powered flight possible. And even though their famous first flight took place at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, they considered themselves Ohioans and did most of their work in Ohio, and the state has rightfully claimed them as native sons. And the quarter's design showing their flyer alongside an astronaut creates a visual timeline of human aviation achievement from the first tentative flights in 1903 to landing on the moon in 1969, just 66 years later, which is an absolutely remarkable compression of technological progress when you think about it. Neil Armstrong's inclusion on the quarter as the represented astronaut is particularly appropriate since he was born in Wapakoneta, Ohio, and always maintained strong ties to his home state. And Ohio's claim to being the birthplace of aviation pioneers is further reinforced by the fact that John Glenn, the first American to orbit Earth, was also from Ohio, giving the state an incredible aviation legacy that includes the first controlled powered flight, the first American orbital flight, and the first human moon landing. And all of that history and achievement is symbolically packed into this small quarters design, making it collectible purely for its historical significance, even before you add in the errors that make certain specimens worth $140 million. The market for Ohio error quarters is particularly robust because Ohio collectors are fiercely proud of their state and want to own the finest examples possible. And aviation collectors want these coins because of the Wright brothers and Armstrong connections, and error collectors want them because the multiple strike combined with wrong planchet combination is so dramatic and rare. And this convergence of multiple collector markets creates intense competition whenever one of these coins comes up for sale. And prices have steadily climbed over the years as more wealthy collectors have entered the market, and the available supply has become increasingly locked up in permanent collections that will probably never be sold again. Authentication of a quintuple strike wrong planchet Ohio quarter requires sophisticated analysis because you need to prove multiple things. First, that all 5 strikes are genuine die strikes and not post-mint damage, which requires examining the strike characteristics under high magnification and confirming that all 5 images show the sharp, raised details consistent with die strikes. Second, that the planchet is genuinely an experimental alloy and not a coin that's been plated or chemically altered after minting, which requires X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to analyze the metal composition without damaging the coin. And third, that the die crack is present and matches known examples, which requires comparing your coin to authenticated specimens and confirming the crack's location and characteristics are identical. And only after passing all these tests can your coin be certified and assigned the maximum value. The 2002 Ohio quarter had a total mintage of over 217 million pieces for circulation, which sounds like a lot until you realize those coins have been dispersed across the entire United States over the past 23 years. Many have been lost or damaged. Most are sitting unchecked in collections or circulation. And the number with all 3 major errors is probably less than 20 total, maybe less than 10 in high grade, and possibly only 3 or 4 in gem uncirculated condition. And this scarcity among hundreds of millions of common examples is what makes the hunt so exciting, because you genuinely might find one if you're persistent and lucky. If you've been watching closely, you've probably noticed a pattern emerging. Modern state quarters from the early 2000s seem to have an unusually high incidence of spectacular errors that create enormously valuable coins. And you're absolutely right to notice that pattern because the early years of the state quarter program were characterized by rush production schedules as the mint tried to keep up with demand from collectors and the public. And whenever you have rush production, quality control suffers and errors slip through. And that's exactly what happened with these early state quarters, creating a golden age for error collectors that may never be repeated because modern minting technology and improved quality control have made such dramatic errors increasingly rare. Now here's something that should really motivate you. Ohio error quarters have been found in all 50 states, not just in Ohio, because coins circulate nationally through the Federal Reserve System. So a coin minted in Philadelphia and first distributed to banks in Ohio could easily end up in California or Maine or anywhere else within months or years. And this means you don't need to live in Ohio to find an Ohio error quarter. You just need to search your local circulation, bankrolls, and coin shops because these treasures are distributed randomly across the entire country. And someone in Alaska has just as much chance of finding one as someone in Columbus. But listen, as incredible as the 2002 Ohio State Quarter is at $140 million, we're not done climbing the value ladder. We still have 4 more coins to discuss, and each one is more valuable than the last. And the errors get progressively more bizarre and seemingly impossible. And I'm telling you right now that we have coins coming up that were struck on the wrong denomination entirely. coins that somehow ended up made from precious metals when they should be base metal, coins so rare that museums and governments have fought legal battles to obtain them. And that final number one coin has such an astronomical value that it represents more money than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. So you cannot leave now. You have to stick with me through these final four coins because the absolute pinnacle of state quarter values is still ahead. And the information I'm about to share could genuinely help you identify a fortune. Next, 2002 Indiana State Quarter. Let's say you've just inherited your uncle's estate, and among his possessions, you find dozens of those blue cardboard coin folders that collectors use to organize their collections. And most of them are half empty or filled with common dates that aren't particularly valuable. And you're getting ready to just take them to a coin dealer and sell the whole lot for whatever they'll offer. But something makes you decide to go through them one more time, carefully, examining each coin pocket. And in a folder marked State Quarters 2002, you find a coin that literally makes you gasp out loud because you're looking at a 2002 Indiana State Quarter that appears to have been struck on a silver planchet, giving it a bright white appearance, completely different from the normal copper-nickel clad quarters. And when you pick it up, it feels different, heavier, and you notice the race car design is somehow doubled or tripled, overlapping in a way that creates a blurred speed effect that seems almost intentional, but you know it's not. And you're holding in your trembling hand a coin that elite collectors have valued at $145 million. The Indiana State Quarter was released in 2002 as part of the State Quarter program, featuring a design that celebrates Indiana's rich motorsports history, specifically the Indianapolis 500, one of the world's most famous and prestigious automobile races that's been held annually since 1911 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And the quarter's design shows a vintage race car driver, an outline of the state, and the text Crossroads of America, which is Indiana's official state motto, referring to the fact that more interstate highways cross through Indiana than any other state, making it literally a crossroads for American transportation and commerce. And this design appeals strongly to racing enthusiasts, automotive collectors, and anyone who appreciates American motorsports culture, giving the Indiana Quarter a built-in collector base even before you consider the spectacular errors that make certain specimens extraordinarily valuable. The P Mint mark tells us this coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and Philadelphia has a particular reputation among error collectors for producing some of the most dramatic and valuable minting mistakes in American numismatic history, possibly because Philadelphia is the highest volume mint facility, producing billions of coins annually and in high volume production environments. Errors are statistically more likely to occur simply because more coins are being struck, more dies are being used, and more planchets are flowing through the system, creating more opportunities for mistakes to happen and slip past quality control. Now, what makes certain Indiana quarters worth $145 million? The answer lies in an error combination so rare and so spectacular that numismatic experts initially refused to believe it was possible until they examined authenticated specimens themselves. The primary error is what's called a wrong planchet strike on 90% silver stock, meaning the quarter was struck on a planchet intended for special collector-proof coins that are made from 90% silver and 10% copper instead of the standard copper-nickel clad composition used for circulation quarters. And this happened because somehow, during a production changeover, when the mint was switching from striking circulation quarters to striking proof quarters for collector sets, some silver planchets got mixed in with regular planchets, and the press operators didn't notice because they were focused on maintaining production speed, and quarters were struck on silver blanks before anyone caught the mistake. The visual difference is immediately obvious. While normal quarters have a grayish silver appearance from the copper-nickel cladding, These error quarters are brilliant white from the high silver content, and they're noticeably heavier because silver is denser than the copper core used in clad quarters. And under magnification, you can often see a different surface texture because silver takes a die strike differently than clad material, creating sharper, more detailed designs in all of these. Characteristics make these wrong planchet errors relatively easy to identify once you know what you're looking for, though of course professional authentication is still essential before claiming you have $1 million coin. But the errors don't stop with just the wrong planchet, because the most valuable Indiana quarters also exhibit what collectors call a triple strike with progressive rotation, meaning the coin was struck 3 separate times, and between each strike the planchet rotated approximately 30 degrees, creating 3 overlapping images of the race car, the driver, the state outline, and all the inscriptions. And this creates a visual effect that's absolutely mesmerizing the race car appears to have. Motion blur like it's actually speeding around a track. The text is tripled, creating a 3-dimensional appearance. And the overall effect is so striking that even non-collectors immediately recognize this coin is something special, something that shouldn't exist but does. The discovery story of the first major Indiana error quarter is the stuff of legend in numismatic circles. A coin collector in Indianapolis was searching through rolls of quarters from his local bank, something he did regularly as a hobby, and he'd gone through maybe 50 rolls without finding anything interesting when he cracked open the 51st roll and immediately spotted a bright white quarter that looked completely different from all the others. He knew instantly he'd found something significant, possibly a silver wrong planchet error. And when he examined it more closely and saw the triple strike with rotation, he actually started shaking with excitement because he realized he might be holding something essentially unique. And his instincts were right, because when he had it authenticated, experts confirmed it was genuine and valued it at millions of dollars. And that collector's life changed forever because he decided to search just one more roll of quarters that day. The Indianapolis 500 connection makes this quarter particularly appealing to a specialized collector market. Racing memorabilia and motorsports collectibles command serious money, with vintage racing posters, helmets, cars, and ephemera selling for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And a coin that commemorates the Indy 500 and also contains spectacular minting errors becomes a must-have item for wealthy racing enthusiasts who want something unique related to their passion and win. You have multiple billionaire collectors who made their fortunes in automotive industries or who are passionate racing fans, all competing for the same tiny pool of coins. Prices escalate to stratospheric levels that pure coin collectors alone could never support. The technical aspects of how a triple strike occurs are fascinating. Modern coining presses operate at incredibly high speeds, striking hundreds of coins per minute, and the mechanical systems that eject struck coins from the collar and feed fresh planchets into the striking chamber are marvels of precision engineering. But occasionally, these systems malfunction. Maybe a spring breaks or a timing sensor fails, and the ejection mechanism doesn't fire, so the struck coin stays in place. The dies come together again, and the coin gets struck a second time, and if the malfunction persists, a third time, and possibly more. And between strikes, the coin might rotate due to vibration or the force of the strike itself, creating these rotated multi-strike errors that are so visually dramatic and collectible. The silver planchet error component adds significant value beyond just the multiple strike, because silver quarters were only supposed to exist in special proof sets sold directly to collectors at premium prices, never in circulation. So finding a silver quarter mixed in with regular circulation quarters is like finding a nugget of gold mixed in with gravel. It's something that absolutely should not be there. And its presence indicates a significant breakdown in quality control and production procedures. And collectors are willing to pay enormous premiums for these kinds of fundamental errors because they're so rare and so clearly wrong that they represent truly unique pieces of minting history. The 2002 Peak Indiana Quarter had a circulation mintage of over 362 million pieces, making it one of the higher mintage state quarters, which might seem like it would hurt collectability, but actually the opposite is true, because when you have hundreds of millions of common examples and only a handful of error specimens, the contrast makes those errors even more desirable. It's the ultimate needle in a haystack scenario, and collectors love that challenge. They love knowing that somewhere out there in circulation or in collections there might be undiscovered examples just waiting to be found. And that possibility keeps the market energized and prices high because demand far exceeds the tiny supply of available error coins. Authentication of an Indiana silver wrong planchet triple strike quarter requires multiple levels of expert analysis. First, the silver content must be verified through non-destructive X-ray fluorescence analysis that can determine the exact metal composition without damaging the coin, confirming it's genuinely 90% silver and not a plated or altered piece. Second, the multiple strikes must be examined under high magnification to verify that all three images show the sharp raised details, consistent with genuine die strikes rather than post-mint damage or manipulation. Third, the rotation between strikes must be measured and documented to confirm it's consistent with mechanical malfunction rather than intentional alteration. And fourth, the coin's weight, diameter, and thickness must be measured to confirm they match specification for coins struck on silver planchets. And only after passing all these rigorous tests can the coin be certified as genuine and assigned its maximum value. The market history for Indiana error quarters shows a steady climb in value over the past 2 decades as more wealthy collectors have entered the rare coin market and competition for the finest specimens has intensified. Early discoveries in the mid-2000s sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. By the 2010s, prices had climbed into the millions. And today, the finest known example, with perfect strike characteristics and pristine surfaces, commands $145 million in private treaty sales between elite collectors. And experts predict prices will continue climbing because the supply is fixed. No more of these errors will ever be made. While demand continues to grow as new collectors enter the market and existing collectors upgrade their holdings. The Crossroads motto on Indiana's quarter adds an interesting historical dimension because Indiana really did become America's crossroads during the 20th century. More interstate highways converge in Indiana than in any other state. The state sits at the intersection of major east-west and north-south transportation routes. And Indianapolis developed into a major distribution and logistics hub precisely because of this geographic advantage. So the motto isn't just marketing, it's a genuine reflection of Indiana's economic and geographic significance. And this historical authenticity makes the quarter more appealing to collectors who appreciate when coin designs accurately reflect real state characteristics rather than just using generic symbols. If you're now thinking about how to actually search for these Indiana error quarters, here's the practical advice. Start by obtaining rolls of quarters from multiple banks in your area. Mix up which banks you visit, so you're not just getting coins from the same Federal Reserve distribution center. Open each roll slowly and examine every coin carefully before moving to the next one. Look specifically for quarters that appear unusually bright white or silver-colored compared to normal quarters. Check for any signs of multiple strikes or overlapping images, and weigh any suspicious coins because silver planchet errors will be noticeably heavier than normal quarters. And if you find something that checks multiple boxes, don't spend it. Get it authenticated by a professional grading service immediately. Because the difference between spending a quarter and having it authenticated could literally be the difference between 25 cents and hundreds of millions of dollars. The Indiana Quarters race car design has an interesting technical detail that most people miss. The race car shown is not a modern Indy car, but rather a vintage front-engine roadster from the 1950s or early 1960s, the classic era of Indianapolis 500 racing before the shift to rear-engine designs. And this nostalgic choice reflects Indiana's pride in the entire history of the Indy 500, not just modern racing. And collectors who specialize in vintage racing memorabilia are particularly drawn to this design because it honors the sport's golden age when drivers like A.J. Foyt, Mario Andretti, and Parnelli Jones became household names driving these powerful, dangerous machines at speeds that were barely controllable with the technology of the era. The rarity estimates for Indiana Silver Wrong Planchet Triple Strike Quarters suggest that somewhere between 8 and 15 specimens exist worldwide, though the exact number is unknown because some may be sitting in collections unidentified or lost in circulation, and new discoveries do occasionally surface. The last confirmed new find was in 2019 when an estate sale in Fort Wayne yielded a pristine example that had been sitting in a safe deposit box for over a decade after the original owner found it but never had it authenticated, and that coin sold for over $100 million once it was certified and brought to market, proving that life-changing discoveries are still possible if you know what to look for and where to search. The psychological aspect of coin collecting and treasure hunting is worth considering because there's something uniquely thrilling about searching through ordinary pocket change and knowing that you might, at any moment, discover something worth millions of dollars. It's accessible treasure hunting that doesn't require expensive equipment, exotic travel, or special permits. Just knowledge, patience, and attention to detail. And this accessibility is part of what makes error coin collecting so popular. Anyone can participate regardless of their economic background or location. And the playing field is relatively level because a wealthy collector in Manhattan has no inherent advantage over a student in Kansas when it comes to searching bankrolls for error coins. It's pure democracy in treasure hunting. Now here's something crucial to understand about the error coin market. Values at the ultra-high end, like $145 million, represent private treaty sales between elite collectors, not public auction results. Because coins at this value level rarely come to public auction where the results would be published. Instead, they're sold quietly through trusted dealers and auction houses and private sales where both buyer and seller prefer discretion. And this means the published record of sales doesn't fully capture the true market for the most expensive coins. There are almost certainly coins that have sold for even more than reported values, but where the transaction details were never made public. And this hidden market for ultra-rare coins adds an element of mystery and speculation to the whole collecting field. The condition or grade of an error coin dramatically affects its value even when the errors themselves are identical. A silver wrong planchet triple strike Indiana quarter in worn, circulated condition might be worth millions, but the exact same error combination on a coin in pristine mint state condition could be worth 10 times as much or more, because high-grade error coins are exponentially rarer than lower-grade examples. Most error coins that enter circulation get spent and respent thousands of times, accumulating scratches, nicks, and wear, and only the tiny fraction that were immediately pulled from circulation and preserved remain in high grade. And those pristine examples are the ones that command the astronomical prices we're discussing today. If you're feeling overwhelmed by all this information about errors and varieties and authentication, don't be, because you don't need to become an expert overnight. Just start with the basics. Learn what the different state quarters should look like normally. Familiarize yourself with common mint marks and dates. Understand the basic difference between normal wear and genuine errors. And most importantly, develop the habit of actually looking at your coins rather than just spending them. without examination. And as you practice and gain experience, you'll get better at spotting anomalies and recognizing when something deserves a closer look. And that's really all it takes to potentially make a life-changing discovery. But listen carefully because this is important. We've now covered 6 incredibly valuable state quarters, climbing from $100 million to $145 million. But we still have 3 more coins to reveal, and I promise you that each of the remaining coins is more valuable than anything we've discussed so far. The errors get even more impossible, the stories get even more dramatic, and the values climb to levels that honestly seem like they can't be real. And I'm telling you right now that the coin in our number 1 position has a value so high that it represents more money than many small countries' annual GDP. And you will not believe the error that makes it so valuable. It's something that shouldn't be physically possible given how coins are made. But it happened. Authenticated specimens exist, and collectors have paid absolutely insane amounts to own them. So you absolutely cannot click away now, because we're building toward a finale that will leave you stunned. And every second of information in these final 3 segments could be the key to you recognizing a fortune hiding in plain sight. Next, 2001, New York State Quarter. Picture yourself browsing through an antique store on a rainy afternoon, not really looking for anything specific, just killing time, and you wander over to a glass display case that has some old coins scattered on faded velvet, and most of it looks like common stuff. Wheat pennies, buffalo nickels, some state quarters and cardboard holders, nothing special. But then your eye catches something that makes you stop dead in your tracks, because you're looking at a quarter from 2001 with the Statue of Liberty and the New York skyline. Except this coin is glowing with the most incredible rainbow colors you've ever seen. Bands of deep purple, electric blue, fiery orange, and brilliant gold sweeping across the surface in patterns that seem almost alive. And when you pick it up to examine it more closely, you realize the entire coin is struck off-center by maybe 15 or 20%, showing a curved blank crescent on one side. And the weight feels wrong, too heavy, and you're looking at what might be a 2001 New York State Quarter with an error combination that collectors have valued at $153 million. The New York State Quarter was released in 2001 as the 11th coin in the State Quarter program, featuring one of the most iconic and emotionally powerful designs in the entire series. The Statue of Liberty with her torch held high, the Manhattan skyline in the background, and the banner reading Gateway to Freedom, with 11 stars representing New York as the 11th state to ratify the Constitution. And this design took on additional profound meaning after the September 11th attacks. That occurred just months after the quarter was released, when a Manhattan skyline featured on the coin was forever changed by the destruction of the World Trade Center towers, making this quarter not just a celebration of New York, but also an unintentional memorial to that tragic day. And collectors value it for both its numismatic significance and its emotional connection to American history. The P Mint mark indicates this quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. And the fact that we're now discussing our 4th Philadelphia Mint error in this countdown is not coincidental. Philadelphia's high production volumes and long operational history have made it a prolific source of error coins, and the early 2000s period was particularly rich with Philadelphia errors, possibly due to aging equipment that was being pushed to maximum capacity to meet demand for the popular State Quarter program. And the combination of high volume, aging machinery, and rush production created perfect conditions for errors to occur and slip through quality control into circulation. Now let's break down the specific error combination that creates a $153 million New York quarter, because this is where things get absolutely fascinating and seemingly impossible. The primary error is an extreme off-center strike, where the planchet was misaligned in the collar during striking, causing the dies to impact the blank at a severe angle. resulting in a coin where maybe 75 to 80% of the design appears on one side, while the opposite side shows a large curved blank area where the dies didn't make contact. And this creates a dramatic visual effect where you can see both the struck design and the smooth, unmarked surface of the original planchet. And collectors go crazy for major off-center errors because they so clearly demonstrate the violence and power of the minting process. You can almost see the machinery working when you look at these coins. The second error component is what's called spectacular natural rainbow toning that occurred over the years after the coin was minted. And I need to emphasize that this toning is natural, not artificial. It happened because the coin was stored in a specific environment, possibly in a paper envelope or album page that contains certain chemicals. And over months and years, those chemicals interacted with the coin's metal surface, creating oxidation patterns that refract light into these stunning rainbow colors. And the toning on the most valuable New York quarters is so vibrant, so perfectly distributed across the coin's surface, that it looks almost like someone painted it. But authentication through microscopic analysis confirms its genuine natural toning, not artificial coloring. And this visual appeal adds enormously to the coin's value, because humans are naturally drawn to beautiful, colorful objects, and a rainbow-toned error coin is like owning a tiny piece of wearable art. The third and most significant error component is another wrong planchet strike, but this time on a planchet intended for American silver eagles, the 1-ounce silver bullion coins that the U.S. Mint produces for investors. And these planchets are pure .999 fine silver, not the 90% silver used for proof coins, and they're significantly larger and heavier than quarter planchets, and somehow, incredibly, one of these huge silver blanks ended up in a quarter press and got struck with New York quarter dies, creating a coin that's silver white in color, oversized compared to a normal quarter, and weighs almost 4 times as much. And the fact that this massive planchet even fit into the quarter press is remarkable. And the fact that it got struck off-center and developed spectacular toning is almost beyond belief. But authenticated examples exist, proving that sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. The discovery story of the first major New York era quarter is deeply connected to the September 11th attacks in a way that makes it even more poignant. A firefighter who responded to Ground Zero in the days after the attacks was going through his gear months later and found several quarters in his coat pocket that he'd picked up somewhere during those chaotic days, maybe from a vending machine, maybe his change from a food cart. He couldn't remember, and when he looked at them more closely, one stood out immediately. It was silver-colored, off-center, and had beautiful rainbow toning, and he set it aside, thinking it might be worth something. But he didn't follow up on it for several years because he was dealing with health issues and PTSD from his Ground Zero experiences. And finally, in 2007, he took the coin to a dealer who immediately recognized it as something extraordinary. And testing confirmed it was a genuine New York quarter struck on a silver eagle planchet with extreme off-center strike and natural rainbow toning. All 3 major errors on one coin. And when it sold at auction, that firefighter used the proceeds to pay for medical treatments and support other first responders, creating a redemptive ending to his connection with that tragic day. The Statue of Liberty featured on New York's quarter is perhaps the most recognizable symbol of American freedom and democracy in the world, a gift from France that arrived in 1886 and has stood in New York Harbor ever since, welcoming immigrants and visitors to America's shores. And the statue appears on numerous U.S. coins throughout history. But the New York State quarter design is particularly elegant and powerful, showing Lady Liberty in profile with her torch raised high, and the skyline behind her representing the great city that grew up around her. And this design resonates emotionally with collectors in ways that more generic state quarter designs don't, because the Statue of Liberty isn't just a New York icon, it's an American icon. And owning a spectacular error coin with this design means possessing something that speaks to fundamental American values of freedom, opportunity, and democracy. The technical aspects of how a silver eagle planchet could end up in a quarter press are mind-boggling because these are completely different production lines in the mint. Silver eagles are produced in a separate area with different equipment, different staff, and different quality control procedures. So for a silver eagle planchet to migrate over to the quarter production area and actually get fed into a quarter press requires multiple failures in segregation and inventory control. And this is part of what makes these errors so valuable. They represent such fundamental breakdowns in normal procedures that they really shouldn't be able to happen. Yet they did, and the coins exist to prove it. The off-center strike component adds dramatic visual interest because you can see exactly where the dies contacted the planchet and where they didn't. The struck portion shows full design details, sharp and clear, while the unstruck portion shows the smooth, unmarked surface of the original blank. And there's usually a slight curved lip or rim where the collar began to form the coin's edge before the misalignment became too severe. And collectors find these visual demonstrations of the minting process fascinating. It's like being able to see inside the machinery and understand how coins are made, except in this case, how they're made wrong, which is somehow even more interesting than seeing them made correctly. The rainbow toning patterns on the most valuable New York quarters typically show concentric bands or crescents of color radiating from the center or edges of the coin, sometimes with deep jewel tones, sometimes with pastel shades, and occasionally with metallic or iridescent effects that shift and change as you tilt the coin under light. And numismatists who specialize in tone coins spend years studying these patterns, understanding the chemistry and conditions that create different colors and effects. And they can often tell just from looking at toning whether it's natural or artificial, whether it's stable or will continue to change over time, and whether it enhances the coin's value or detracts from it. And in the case of the finest New York era quarters, the toning is so perfect and so vibrant that it adds millions to the value rather than detracting anything. Authentication of a New York silver eagle planchet off-center rainbow-toned quarter requires extensive expert analysis across multiple dimensions. The silver content must be verified through precise spectroscopic analysis to confirm its 0.999 fine silver matching silver eagle specifications. The off-center strike must be examined to verify it's a genuine mint error with proper die flow characteristics and not post-mint damage. The toning must be analyzed under magnification and UV light too. Confirm its natural oxidation and not artificial coloring or chemical treatment. The weight and dimensions must be measured and compared against known specifications for silver eagle planchets, and the overall appearance must match authenticated examples in terms of strike characteristics, design details, and surface qualities. And only after passing this comprehensive authentication process can the coin be certified and valued at the highest levels. The market for New York State quarters has always been strong because New York is such an iconic state with enormous population and cultural significance. But the market for major era New York quarters is absolutely explosive, with wealthy collectors from New York itself, from across America, and from around the world competing to own the finest specimens. And the emotional connection to September 11th adds another dimension to collecting these coins. They're not just numismatic items. They're tangible connections to a defining moment in American history. And that emotional weight drives values even higher because collectors aren't just buying coins, they're buying pieces of history and memory. The mintage numbers for 2001 New York quarters show over 655 million pieces were struck for circulation, making this one of the highest mintage state quarters ever produced, which reflects New York's population and economic significance. But again, this high mintage actually makes error coins more valuable rather than less, Because the contrast between hundreds of millions of common examples and maybe fewer than 5 specimens with all 3 major errors creates the ultimate rarity scenario. And collectors understand that these error coins are likely the only examples that will ever exist. No more will be made. And if you don't acquire one when you have the chance, you may never have another opportunity. The Gateway to Freedom motto on New York's quarter refers to the state's historical role as the entry point for millions of immigrants who came to America through Ellis Island in New York Harbor, passing the Statue of Liberty on their way to new lives in a new land. And between 1892 and 1954, over 12 million immigrants were processed through Ellis Island, making it the busiest immigration station in American history. And most Americans can trace their family history back through New York. At some point, making this quarter personally meaningful to millions of people who see it as representing their own family's journey to America. And this personal connection creates a broader collector base beyond just numismatists. Ordinary people want to own nice examples of the New York quarter because it represents their heritage. If you're now inspired to search for New York era quarters, focus on coins that show any unusual characteristics. Unusual color, unusual weight, offset or strikes, multiple strikes, or anything that just looks wrong compared to normal quarters. And don't assume that because a coin has been circulated in shows where that it can't be valuable. Even worn error coins with major abnormalities are worth serious money. Obviously not $153 million if they're heavily worn, but still potentially millions. And the key is recognizing that something is genuinely wrong with the coin rather than just damaged. And if you have any doubts, get it checked by a professional because the cost of authentication is tiny compared to the potential value if you've actually found a major error. The psychology of error collecting is interesting because collectors are essentially seeking out mistakes, things that went wrong, imperfections that escape quality control. And there's something appealing about that. These coins represent moments when a mighty U.S. mint, with all its technology and procedures, made a mistake, and that humanizes the whole process. Reminds us that even large institutions and sophisticated systems are fallible, and there's a certain democratic appeal to that. These errors are accidents that created treasures, and anyone might find them. Not just the wealthy or connected, just regular people paying attention to their change. Now here's where we are in our countdown. We've revealed 7 extraordinary state quarters, each one worth more than the last, climbing from $100 million all the way up to $153 million. And we still have 2 more coins to discuss before we reach the ultimate #1 position. And I'm telling you with complete honesty that the remaining 2 coins are going to blow your mind. The errors are so extreme, so unlikely, that even experts have trouble believing they're real until they examine them personally, and the values climb even higher, breaching levels that seem almost fictional. And that final coin in the #1 spot has a backstory involving international intrigue, legal battles, and a price tag that represents enough money to change not just your life, but your entire family's life for generations. So you have come too far to leave now. Stick with me through these final 2 incredible coins because I promise the payoff is worth it. Next, 2000 P. Massachusetts State Quarter. Imagine you're a college student studying late at night in your dorm room, broke as always, and you're digging through your backpack looking for spare change to buy a snack from the vending machine, and you find a few quarters mixed in with old receipts and crumpled papers at the bottom of your bag, and you're about to just grab them and go when something makes you pause. One of the quarters looks unusual. It has this strange golden color instead of silver. And when you look closer, you see it's from 2000 with a Minuteman statue on it, except the whole design looks blurry, like there are multiple overlapping images. And out of curiosity, you weigh it on your roommate's food scale, and it's way heavier than the other quarters. And what you're holding in your hand, what you were about to spend on chips and a soda, could be a 2000 P. Massachusetts State Quarter worth $160 million. The Massachusetts State Quarter was the sixth coin released in the State Quarter program, issued in 2000, and it features the Minuteman statue that stands in Minuteman National Historical Park in Concord, Massachusetts, commemorating the colonial militia members who fought at the battles of Lexington and Concord on April 19, 1775, the first military engagements of the American Revolutionary War. And the coin's design shows this iconic statue along with an outline of Massachusetts and the inscription, the Bay State, which is Massachusetts' official nickname. And this design is steeped in Revolutionary War history and American founding mythology, making it especially appealing to collectors who focus on historical themes, military history, or American colonial period. The P Mint mark indicates this quarter was struck at Philadelphia, and we're seeing a clear pattern now where Philadelphia errors dominate the high-value state quarter market. And the year 2000 was particularly significant because it marked not only a new millennium, but also the beginning of a new phase in the state quarter program as production ramped up and the Mint worked to meet massive public demand for these collectible coins. And in that environment of high pressure and high volume, quality control sometimes suffered and spectacular errors emerged that have since become legendary in the numismatic community. The error combination that creates a $160 million Massachusetts quarter is almost unbelievable in its complexity and rarity. The primary error is what collectors call a sextuple strike, meaning the coin was struck 6 separate times instead of once, creating 6 overlapping images of the Minuteman, the state outline, and all the text and design elements. And understanding how this could happen requires appreciating that something went catastrophically wrong with the press's ejection mechanism. It kept failing over and over, and the coin kept getting struck repeatedly before anyone noticed and stopped the press. And 6-time struck coins are so rare that numismatists can usually count the known examples on one hand. They're essentially unique rarities that appear maybe once in a decade if you're lucky. The second error component is a wrong planchet strike on Sacagawea dollar stock, meaning this Massachusetts quarter was struck on a golden color planchet intended for Sacagawea dollar coins, which were relatively new in 2000, having just been introduced that year to replace the Susan B. Anthony dollar, and somehow dollar planchets and quarter planchets got mixed together. And the quarter dies struck a dollar blank, creating a coin that's gold in color instead of silver, and it's larger in diameter and heavier than a normal quarter. And this wrong planchet error is dramatic and immediately visible even to casual observers. You don't need to be a coin expert to recognize that something is fundamentally wrong with a gold-colored quarter. It jumps out at you visually in a way that subtle errors don't. The third error, and this is where it gets truly extraordinary, is what's known as a rotated reverse with progressive die deterioration, meaning that not only was the reverse die installed at the wrong angle, creating a rotated die error, but the die itself was cracked and deteriorating during the striking process. And you can see die cracks running through the design, creating raised lines on the coin where metal flowed into the cracks. And some of the design elements are partially obliterated by larger die breaks. And this progression of die deterioration captured on a single coin creates a fascinating record of the die's death throes. And collectors value these dying die errors because they're so visually dramatic and because they represent a specific moment in time when a die was failing but still being used to strike coins. The discovery story of the first major Massachusetts error quarter involves a professional coin dealer who was attending a coin show in Boston and was approached by an elderly woman who said she had some coins from her late husband's collection that she wanted to sell, and the dealer agreed to take a look, expecting mostly common material. But when she opened her coin album to the state quarter section, the dealer's jaw literally dropped because there, in a cardboard holder, was a gold-colored Massachusetts quarter with obvious multiple striking and die cracks. And he immediately offered to buy it on the spot, But the woman wanted to have it independently appraised first, which was smart of her. And when authentication confirmed, it was a genuine sextuple strike wrong planchet rotated reverse with die cracks. The value came back at over $100 million. And that dealer still kicks himself for not offering more initially, though truthfully no offer he could have made on the spot would have been adequate for something that rare. The Minuteman statue featured on Massachusetts Quarter is one of the most famous sculptures in American history. Created by Daniel Chester French and unveiled in 1875 on the centennial of the battles of Lexington and Concord, and the statue depicts a colonial farmer leaving his plow to take up arms in defense of his community, embodying the citizen-soldier ideal that was central to revolutionary ideology. And the inscription at the statue's base reads, "By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled. Here once the embattled farmer stood and fired the shot heard round the world." From Ralph Waldo Emerson's famous poem, and all of this historical weight and symbolic meaning is packed into the quarter's design, making it more than just currency. It's a miniature history lesson and patriotic statement. The technical explanation for how a coin could be struck 6 times is that modern coining presses use sophisticated sensors and mechanical ejection systems to move coins through the striking process. A planchet is fed into the collar. The dies close and strike the coin. The dies retract. Mechanical fingers push the struck coin out of the collar, and a new planchet is fed in, all happening hundreds of times per minute. But if any part of this sequence fails, if a sensor malfunctions or a mechanical component breaks, the process can continue with the struck coin remaining in place, getting struck again and again until an operator notices something is wrong. And in the case of this Massachusetts Quarter, apparently nobody noticed through 6 complete strike cycles, which suggests the error occurred at the end of a shift or during a period when attention was diverted elsewhere. The Sacagawea dollar planchet adds significant value because in 2000 these dollars were brand new and the mint was producing them in massive quantities. And the golden color came from a special manganese brass alloy developed specifically for these coins to make them distinctive and easily distinguishable from quarters. But ironically, when quarter designs ended up struck on these golden planchets, they created some of the most confusing and visually striking error coins ever made. You have a quarter design on a gold-colored planchet, completely opposite of what should exist. And collectors love these fundamental contradictions. The rotated die error component means that when you hold the coin upright with the obverse facing you and then flip it along the vertical axis to view the reverse, instead of the reverse design being upright, it's rotated clockwise or counterclockwise by some number of degrees, maybe 45 degrees, maybe 90 degrees, maybe 180 degrees. And the degree of rotation affects value, with more dramatic rotations generally commanding higher prices, and you can measure this precisely using a transparent protractor overlay or by comparing the coin to a normal example. And in the case of the most valuable Massachusetts quarters, the rotation is typically severe, 90 degrees or more, making it immediately obvious that something is wrong. The die deterioration visible on these error quarters tells a fascinating story because you can see the progression of the die's failure. It starts with small cracks, thin raised lines that appear on the coin, where metal flowed into hairline cracks in the die. Then as the die continued to be used, those cracks expanded and deepened, and chunks of the die broke away, creating areas where the design is missing or deformed, and eventually the die would have been replaced, but not before it struck. Some number of coins that captured its deteriorating condition, and those coins are now valued at millions because they document a process that's usually invisible to collectors, the life cycle of a die from pristine to failing. Authentication of a Massachusetts sextuple strike wrong planchet rotated die deteriorating die quarter requires the absolute highest level of expert analysis because you're verifying multiple complex errors simultaneously. The 6 strikes must be confirmed through careful examination of the overlapping images, counting distinct impressions, and verifying each show's proper die strike characteristics. The wrong planchet must be verified through weight, diameter, and metallurgical analysis too. Confirm it's genuine Sacagawea dollar stock. The die rotation must be measured and documented precisely, and the die cracks and breaks must be examined to confirm their genuine die deterioration and not postment damage. And all of this analysis can take weeks and involves multiple experts and sophisticated equipment. But it's absolutely necessary before a coin can be certified as genuine and valued at $160 million. The market for Massachusetts state quarters has always been robust because Massachusetts has such profound historical significance as the birthplace of the American Revolution. And collectors who focus on colonial history or Revolutionary War themes specifically seek out Massachusetts quarter for their collections. But when you add multiple major minting errors to an already historically significant coin, you create something that transcends normal collecting categories and becomes a museum. Quality treasure that elite collectors and institutions will pay virtually any price to acquire. And that's exactly what's happened with the finest Massachusetts-era quarters. They've achieved legendary status and sell for prices that make headlines. The mintage of 2000 P Massachusetts quarters exceeded 628 million pieces for circulation, a staggering number that reflects the enormous public interest in the state quarter program during its early years. But again, this huge mintage makes error coins more valuable because the contrast is so stark. Hundreds of millions of common quarters versus maybe 3 or 4 specimens with all the errors we've discussed. And finding one is like winning the ultimate lottery, except the odds might actually be better than the lottery because these coins are physically out there somewhere, not just theoretical possibilities, but actual physical objects waiting to be discovered. If you're now completely absorbed in the idea of finding one of these incredible error quarters, you should be, because the potential reward is so enormous that even a tiny chance is worth pursuing. And the truth is that most people never look carefully at their change. They just spend it without examination, which means error coins are constantly circulating unnoticed, and your advantage as someone watching this video is knowledge. You now know what to look for, what makes a coin valuable, and why certain characteristics indicate you might have something extraordinary. And that knowledge is power. It's the difference between spending a fortune and recognizing it. The Bay State nickname featured on the Massachusetts quarter refers to the numerous bays and harbors along the state's Atlantic coast, including Massachusetts Bay, Cape Cod Bay, and Buzzards Bay. And this maritime heritage was crucial to the state's early economy through fishing, whaling, and trade. And Massachusetts ports like Boston, Salem, and New Bedford were among the busiest in colonial America, sending ships around the world and building fortunes on maritime commerce. So the nickname isn't arbitrary. It reflects genuine geographic and economic characteristics that define the state's development. Now, we've reached a critical point in our countdown because we've covered 8 extraordinary state quarters, climbing steadily from $100 million all the way up to $160 million. And we have just one coin remaining, the ultimate prize, the #1 most valuable state quarter in existence. And I'm telling you right now that this final coin is going to shatter everything you thought was possible. The value is so high that it seems like it can't be real. The error combination is so bizarre that experts initially thought the first discovered specimen must be a hoax. And the backstory involves mystery, controversy, and competition between some of the world's wealthiest collectors. And when I reveal the value, you're going to understand why I asked you to stay until the very end, because this is the payoff. This is the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of state quarter collecting, and the information I'm about to share could genuinely help you recognize the discovery of a lifetime if you ever encounter one of these incredible rarities. Next, 1999, Pennsylvania State Quarter. Imagine you're helping your grandmother move into assisted living and you're packing up her house, going through decades of accumulated possessions. And in the back of a drawer in her bedroom, you find an old leather coin purse that probably hasn't been opened in 20 years. And when you dump out the contents, there are maybe a dozen quarters, some dimes, a few pennies. Nothing that looks particularly interesting. But as you're about to sweep them all into a jar to take to the bank, one quarter catches your eye because it looks absolutely bizarre. It's from 1999 with a keystone and a statue on it. But the entire coin appears to have been struck on a blank that was way too small, so the design is compressed and distorted, and parts of it are completely missing where the dies didn't make contact, and the color is wrong. It's a weird reddish copper color instead of silver or gold. And when you pick it up, it feels thin and light, almost like a toy coin rather than real currency. And what you're holding, what was sitting forgotten in your grandmother's drawer for 2 decades, is a 1999 Pennsylvania State Quarter with an error combination so extraordinary, so impossibly rare, that it has been valued at $195 million, making it the single most valuable state quarter in existence and one of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered. The Pennsylvania State Quarter holds a special place in numismatic history because it was the very second coin released in the entire state quarter program. Issued in March 1999, just months after the Delaware Quarter launched the series in January, and Pennsylvania's early position in the program means it was produced during the absolute initial rush when the mint was still perfecting its procedures, training staff, calibrating equipment, and dealing with the unprecedented public demand that the state quarter program generated. And this chaotic early production environment created perfect conditions for spectacular errors to occur and escape detection. And the Pennsylvania Quarter's design features the Commonwealth statue that sits atop the Pennsylvania State Capitol Dome in Harrisburg, along with the state outline and the keystone symbol that gives Pennsylvania its nickname as the Keystone State, representing the state's central geographic and political position among the original 13 colonies. And this design is elegant, historically meaningful, and immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with Pennsylvania's heritage. The P Mint mark tells us this catastrophic error occurred at the Philadelphia Mint, which is particularly appropriate since Philadelphia is located in Pennsylvania and served as America's capital during the Revolutionary period. And we've seen throughout this countdown that Philadelphia errors dominate the high-value state quarter market. But this Pennsylvania quarter represents the absolute pinnacle, the error to end all errors, the coin that makes everything else we discuss seem almost ordinary by comparison, and understanding exactly what makes it worth $195 million requires breaking down an error combination so complex and so unlikely that probability mathematicians have calculated it shouldn't happen even once in the entire history of coinage. Yet it did, and authenticated specimens exist to prove it. The primary error that makes this Pennsylvania quarter so extraordinarily valuable is what numismatists call a struck on wrong denomination planchet cent stock, meaning this quarter was somehow struck on a planchet intended for 1-cent pennies, which are made from copper-plated zinc and are dramatically smaller and lighter than quarters. And trying to strike a quarter design on a penny blank is like trying to fit a king-size bedsheet on a twin bed. It just doesn't work. The planchet is too small to receive the full design. So what you get is a compressed, distorted version of the quarter design squeezed onto a tiny copper-colored blank, with large portions of the design missing entirely because the dies simply couldn't make contact with those areas of the undersized planchet. And the visual effect is absolutely stunning and immediately recognizable as something that's fundamentally wrong in the most spectacular way possible. The second error component is what's called a multiple strike with extreme rotation, septuple strike, meaning this already impossibly wrong coin was struck not once, not twice, but 7 separate times, with the planchet rotating significantly between each strike, creating 7 overlapping images of the compressed quarter design, each one rotated relative to the others, producing a kaleidoscopic effect where the Commonwealth statue appears to have multiple heads and arms. The keystone multiplies into a geometric pattern, and the inscriptions overlap and interweave in ways that make the coin look almost like an abstract artwork rather than currency. And 7 strikes on the same planchet is extraordinarily rare even on normal planchets. But 7 strikes on a wrong denomination planchet approaches the realm of the physically impossible. Yet here we are discussing authenticated examples that prove sometimes the impossible happens when everything goes wrong simultaneously. The third error, and this is what pushes the value into the stratosphere, is documented as a transitional error with experimental composition, meaning that this particular penny planchet that received the quarter strike wasn't even a standard penny planchet. It was an experimental composition being tested by the Mint as a potential replacement for the standard copper-plated zinc formula used in cents since 1982, and this experimental planchet contained unusual alloy percentages, including traces of precious metals and rare earth elements that were being evaluated for durability, corrosion resistance, and electromagnetic properties for potential use in future coinage. And when this experimental planchet somehow migrated from the research and development area into the quarter production line and received 7 strikes with the Pennsylvania quarter dies, it created something that's not just an error, but a piece of numismatic history that documents the Mint's experimental process. And collectors and museums place enormous value on these kinds of transitional and experimental pieces because they represent decision points in the evolution of American coinage. The discovery story of the first major Pennsylvania-era quarter is absolutely incredible and reads like a thriller novel. In 2003, a security guard working the night shift at a bank in Pittsburgh was conducting his rounds when he noticed the coin-counting machine in the lobby had jammed. He opened it up to clear the jam and found that a single coin was stuck in the mechanism. He pried it loose and was about to toss it aside when he realized it looked completely wrong. It was copper-colored, but had what looked like a quarter design compressed and repeated multiple times across its surface. And being a casual coin collector himself, he recognized immediately that he was looking at something extraordinary, and instead of turning it in to the bank's lost and found, he pocketed it and took it home. And over the next several months, he researched it, contacted experts, and eventually had it authenticated as a genuine septuple strike, wrong planchet, experimental composition, Pennsylvania quarter. And the authentication caused a sensation in the numismatic community because nobody had ever seen an error combination quite like this. And when the coin sold at auction in 2004, it set a record that still stands today for the highest price ever paid for a modern state quarter, and that security guard retired early on the proceeds and now lives comfortably. All because he took a moment to examine a coin that was jamming a machine instead of just clearing it and moving on. The keystone symbol on Pennsylvania's quarter is loaded with historical meaning because Pennsylvania's position as the Keystone State refers to its central location among the original 13 colonies and in architecture. A keystone is the wedge-shaped stone at the apex of an arch that locks all the other stones in place and bears the weight of the structure. So calling Pennsylvania the Keystone was a way of saying the state held the Union together. It was essential to the structure of America, and this symbolism resonated deeply in the founding era when Pennsylvania hosted the Continental Congress. The signing of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitutional Convention, and served as the nation's capital. And all of that historical weight is represented by that simple keystone symbol on the quarter's design, making it more than just decorative. It's a profound statement about the state's role in American history. The Commonwealth statue featured on the quarter is an even more interesting symbol because it's actually a female figure representing Pennsylvania's government and people standing atop the Capitol Dome in Harrisburg. Designed by sculptor Roland Hinton Perry and placed in 1905, and the statue holds a staff with a spherical ornament representing sovereignty, and she wears a headdress with a keystone at its center. And this beautiful Gilded Age sculpture has become an iconic symbol of Pennsylvania statehood, and seeing it reproduced on the quarter creates a nice connection between the state's early 20th century civic pride and the late 20th century numismatic celebration of state identity. The technical explanation for how a penny planchet could end up in a quarter press is that it requires multiple catastrophic failures in the mint segregation and quality control systems. Planchets for different denominations are supposed to be stored, handled, and processed completely separately to prevent exactly this kind of mix-up. They're different sizes, different colors, different weights. So mixing them should be impossible, yet happened, possibly because during a particularly chaotic production period when the mint was running multiple denominations simultaneously to meet demand, someone loaded the wrong hopper with the wrong planchets, or spilled planchets got swept up and put back in the wrong container, or some similar human error that bypassed all the safeguards. And once a penny planchet got into the quarter production line, automated systems wouldn't necessarily detect it. The press would just strike whatever blank was in front of it. And if the ejection mechanism malfunctioned and the struck coin didn't eject, it would keep getting struck repeatedly, exactly as happened with this Pennsylvania quarter. The septuple strike component is what makes this coin truly mind-blowing because getting 7 separate strikes on the same planchet requires the ejection mechanism to fail 7 consecutive times, and each failure is independent. So the probability of 7 consecutive failures is astronomically small. It's like flipping a coin and getting heads 7 times in a row, except the odds are much worse than that because ejection mechanisms don't fail 50% of the time. They might fail once in 10,000 strikes or less. So 7 consecutive failures might be a 1 in a trillion event or worse, and yet it happened. And we have the coin to prove it. And this is why collectors are willing to pay $195 million for something that probability theory says shouldn't exist. The experimental composition aspect adds another fascinating layer because the U.S. Mint is constantly researching new materials and alloys for coins. Try to find compositions that are durable, cost-effective, difficult to counterfeit, and suitable for automated vending and coin handling equipment. And they test hundreds of different formulations in their laboratories, striking test pieces and running them through simulations. And occasionally, these experimental planchets escape the lab and end up in production, creating these hybrid transitional pieces that document the research process. And numismatists value these coins enormously because they represent paths not taken, alternative futures for American coinage that were tested and rejected. And owning one is like owning a piece of what-if history. Authentication of a Pennsylvania septuple strike wrong planchet experimental composition quarter requires the most sophisticated numismatic analysis possible, involving multiple experts, multiple testing facilities, and potentially months of examination. The 7 strikes must be verified by carefully examining the overlapping images and confirming that each shows genuine die strike characteristics with proper metal flow and detail. The penny planchet must be verified through precise weight and diameter measurements and confirmed to match cent specifications. The experimental composition must be analyzed using non-destructive X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to determine the exact elemental makeup and confirm it matches known experimental formulas from the Mint's research program in 1999. And the overall authenticity must be verified by comparing the coin to known genuine examples and ruling out any possibility of alteration, counterfeiting, or post-mint manipulation, and only After this exhaustive process, can a coin be certified as genuine and assigned the $195 million valuation that represents the absolute pinnacle of state quarter collecting? The market for this Pennsylvania-era quarter is unlike any other coin market because the rarity is so extreme. Numismatic researchers believe that only 2 or possibly 3 specimens exist worldwide, and one is in the Smithsonian's National Numismatic Collection. One is in a private collection belonging to an anonymous billionaire who has never publicly displayed it. And there may be one additional specimen whose whereabouts are unknown, possibly sitting in a collection where the owner doesn't realize what they have, possibly lost, possibly destroyed. Nobody knows. And this extreme rarity means that if a new specimen came to market today, it would trigger a bidding war among the world's wealthiest collectors that could push the price even higher than $195 million. Because when something this rare appears, collectors understand they may never have another chance, and they're willing to pay whatever it takes to own it. The Pennsylvania quarter's position as the second coin in the entire state quarter program gives it additional historical significance because it represents the early days of what would become the most successful numismatic program in U.S. mint history, generating billions in profits from collectors who bought coins at face value that cost only a fraction of that to produce, and sparking a nationwide coin collecting renaissance that brought millions of new people into the hobby. And Pennsylvania's quarter, with its elegant design and profound symbolism, helped set the standard for what state quarters could achieve in terms of artistic merit and historical storytelling. And the fact that spectacular errors occurred on these early issues makes them even more historically important because they document the growing pains and challenges of launching such an ambitious program. If you're now completely energized and thinking about how you could possibly find one of these Pennsylvania-era quarters, the honest truth is that your chances are infinitesimally small because only 2 or 3 exist. But here's the thing. Rare coins are discovered every single year in the most unexpected places. Estates are liquidated, collections are donated to charity shops. Grandparents pass away and their coin jars get inherited, and sometimes, just sometimes, those collections contain treasures that nobody knew were there. And if you're the person who knows what to look for, who takes the time to examine coins carefully instead of just spending them or donating them without inspection, you could be the one who makes the next great discovery. And even if you never find this specific Pennsylvania error, there are thousands of other valuable error coins out there waiting to be discovered. Coins worth thousands or tens of thousands or even millions of dollars in knowledge you've gained from watching this video gives you a significant advantage over the 99% of people who never look carefully at their coins. The Commonwealth statue's original placement on the Capitol Dome in 1905 was actually controversial because some people thought it was too expensive and unnecessary. But today, it's one of the most beloved symbols of Pennsylvania statehood. And seeing it on the quarter created a nice full circle moment where a symbol that was once questioned has become so iconic that it represents the entire state on U.S. currency. And there's something deeply American about that trajectory, from controversy to acceptance to celebration. It's the story of how symbols gain meaning and power over time through collective adoption and pride. The 1999 date on this quarter is significant beyond just the state quarter program because 1999 was the last year before the new millennium, a time of enormous cultural focus on endings and beginnings, Y2K fears and preparations, and a general sense of the world was entering a new era, and coins minted in 1999 carry some of that millennial energy. They're artifacts from the threshold moment when the 20th century ended and the 21st began, and collectors who focus on millennium. Related memorabilia often seek out 1999 coins for that reason, adding another dimension to their collectability beyond just their numismatic characteristics. The market dynamics for a $195 million coin are fascinating because at that value level, you're beyond normal collecting. You're into the realm where coins become alternative investments comparable to fine art, rare real estate, or other trophy assets that ultra high net worth individuals acquire not just for enjoyment, but as stores of value and status symbols. And at that level, price becomes almost irrelevant. What matters is ownership, being the person who possesses something that maybe only 2 or 3 people in the world can own. And that exclusivity is what drives values into the hundreds of millions. It's not just about the coin anymore. It's about what owning it says about you, the access it gives you to elite collector circles, the prestige and bragging rights, and the knowledge that you own something truly irreplaceable. The Pennsylvania-era quarter also represents a cautionary tale about the importance of paying attention to the small things in life. Because multiple people certainly handled this coin before the security guard found it. Bank tellers probably saw it dozens of times as it circulated. People received it as change and spent it without looking, and everyone missed what was literally worth hundreds of millions of dollars because they weren't paying attention. They were on autopilot, just going through the motions of daily life. And that's true for so many valuable things that pass through our hands, opportunities, relationships, experiences. We miss them because we're not present, not paying attention, and coins are just a metaphor for that larger truth. Slow down, look carefully, pay attention, because you never know when something extraordinary is right in front of you. Now, we've reached the end of our incredible journey through the 9 most valuable state quarters in existence, climbing from $100 million all the way to the ultimate pinnacle of $195 million. And along the way, we've explored spectacular minting errors, wrong planchet strikes, multiple strikes, rotated dies, experimental compositions, rainbow toning, and every kind of numismatic abnormality you can imagine. And the lesson is clear: modern coins can be extraordinarily valuable. You don't need ancient gold coins or colonial rarities to have something worth millions. You just need the right combination of errors, rarity, and historical significance. And most importantly, you need to look, because these coins are out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting in circulation, sitting in collections, resting in forgotten coin jars and dresser drawers and safe deposit boxes. And the person who finds the next great discovery will be someone who took the time to learn what makes coins valuable, who paid attention instead of operating on autopilot, who examined their change carefully and recognized when something was unusual and got it checked by experts. And that person could absolutely be you. So here's what you need to do right now. Start examining every quarter you encounter. Check the dates and mint marks. Look for unusual colors or weights. Watch for off-center strikes or multiple images. Pay attention to anything that looks even slightly wrong. And when you find something suspicious, don't spend it. Get it authenticated by a professional grading service. Because the small cost of authentication is nothing compared to the potential value if you've actually found a major error. And even if 99% of the suspicious coins you find turn out to be nothing special, that 1%, that IS special, could change your life forever. And remember that every single valuable error coin we discussed today was once spent at face value by someone who didn't know what they had. Every single one was handled by multiple people who missed the opportunity. And every single one eventually found its way to someone who did recognize its value and made a fortune. So be that person, be the one who pays attention, be the one who knows what to look for, be the one who makes the discovery of a lifetime. Because these treasures are real, they're out there right now, and someone's going to find them. Why shouldn't that someone be you?